And now we expand on the activity of the rand and what's forecast in the near term for the local currency as it continues to trade at its weakest. We do so with FX Execution Head at Rand Merchant Bank, Matete Thulare. Thank you so much for your time, Matete. Let's first talk about the rand having gone up, or rather weakened, as much as 0.9% in just a matter of a day. What do we make of this?
Tumisang, I suppose at this point in time, it's all about renewed rand weakness. And I mean, everything at this point in time has been about, the two eyes being inflation globally and also interest rates. I mean, just last week, you saw the Fed hiking by 75 basis points. You saw the likes of the BOE out in England also hiking by the same. But also, you also saw Lesotho and team locally also hiking by 75 basis points. And already the market is expecting more rate hikes from the Fed. Already the probabilities of them hiking at their November and December meeting are also already increasing. The mere fact that there's talks around, potential recession from the first quarter of 2023 next year, and that's a global recession that the market is starting to talk about. That is obviously, putting a lot of pressure on the rand. I mean, just on a year-to-date basis, the rand has lost about 11.5% against the dollar. And also, across just the past month, we've lost about 5% in value against the dollar. But this is not only just a dollar story. It's about what is going to happen over the next 12 months. I mean, already we do know that the geopolitical tension out in Eastern Europe, that is still continuing. We do know that the market obviously is pricing in further rate hikes from the Fed, the BOE, the ECB, and also locally. So it just shows you that, unfortunately, the talks about a recession and obviously the inflation, side of things. I mean, we've seen inflation out in the US that is at, 40-year highs already. It just shows you that obviously the market is really worried about some of these things. And obviously, the likes of China also not growing. That is also going to feed through from a local perspective. I mean, we've already had about 110 days worth of load shedding. I mean, if you just put that into context, that's about 30% worth of load shedding in a year. So it just shows you that obviously is also going to factor through into the productivity of the country. So a lot of things are unfortunately happening, and that's why you're seeing this rand weakness at this point in time. We have seen the rand already touching 2022 highs just yesterday, reaching that 1808 level.
Matete, what also becomes quite concerning is how it affects the ordinary South African purchasing power as well. I mean, we at some point started to normalize the 14 level. Never really did I think we'd hit 18 and start to think that this may be the near-term outlook for the local currency.
So look, I mean, Tumisang, if you think about it, during the height of COVID, in the middle of 2020, the rand did touch 1935. So that's all-time highs, right? So at this point in time, we've still got another, call it, rand and 20 cents to go before we talk about all-time highs. But nonetheless, I mean, you're very much right. I mean, if you're just looking at the inflation basket and also the interest rate increases that we've had from the local central bank, that is obviously going to hurt consumers already, even just how things are, looking from a market's perspective. Even this morning, it just looks like already the local market is starting to price in another 2.5% increase worth of interest rates over the next 12 months. This is obviously going to hurt the consumer. Already the consumer is stretched. I mean, we've seen petrol prices, we've seen food inflation, but also, it unfortunately impacts that purchasing power that you talk about, because salaries are also not increasing at the rate that we're seeing inflation. But also remember the fact that November and December is also going to be crucial, from a local perspective, because we do have, the medium-term budget from October the 26th, where Minister Godongwana will be giving us the outlook. We do have the Fed coming out in November and December. We do have the central bank locally as well. And also, we're also heading into the much-anticipated ANC elective conference in the middle of December. So that's also going to be quite interesting to see how it plays itself out in terms of the rand and where we sit going forward.
So briefly, as a parting shot, for how long can we expect to stay at this level?
How long is a piece of, a string of rope? But unfortunately, at this point in time, we are trying to navigate everything that is happening in these markets. We do know that, obviously, as I said, inflation and interest rates, those are some of the things that we're looking out for. We're still looking out for what is happening from a geopolitical perspective in terms of the tension that's out in Eastern Europe. Obviously, that is impacting energy prices. We're still looking out to all the key events that are going to happen locally, what happens in terms of the load shedding situation and the political outlook. We do need to look out for what's happening from a global perspective in terms of the key events that are going to happen, whether we do have a recession or not, and obviously some of the data points and the headlines that are still going to come through from a global perspective. So there's a lot for us just to digest, and I think the market volatility that has happened over the past 2 years, I think it will continue into 2023.
Thank you for your insights. Head of FX execution at Rand Merchant Bank, Matete Thulare, they're talking to us about the near-term outlook on the Rand as it breached that 18 level. That's